Jason Scholten of Northeast STOL and EA 736 up in Pittsfield 2B7. So for starting this off, I'm going to talk about events that are coming up first of all. And the big thing we had was the raffle ended, and we had our 2 winners were announced. So you should have all had some emails. The winners received emails 5 minutes prior to the non-winners. I don't want to call you losers, but thank you for participating. So those were announced, and congratulations to those that won. I'll be sending off an email with those travel certificates to them. But they both won 2 round-trip tickets, travel certificates on JetBlue, anywhere JetBlue flies. We'll be having another one of those raffles coming up, so hopefully we'll probably have a fundraiser sponsor on that to help raise money for another organization. We're going to donate $500 of the money we made to Maine ACE camps, and then possibly identify some other organizations. Oh, and Jason, you get $500 to go towards your Northeast STOL series for prize money to help incentivize those pilots that are out there that may be on the fence. We'll talk about the STOL series in a little bit. But as far as events that we have coming up, the raffle ended today. Like I said, today we're doing the online Hangar series. On Sunday, we're going to meet with Tim from the Maine Department of Transportation. He's the aviation engineer for the state. He's going to talk a little bit about those items that those things that he does with the state of Maine, but he's also going to talk about the Maine ACE camps that are coming up, and he's going to have some announcements for us. As far as flying events, the next one we have is the Russell Field flying. That's way up in the county, up where I grew up. That's a snowmobile in, drive in, or fly in, and it's, I believe, the Scholten Club is going to help out with that and host that, but they're going to have a barbecue. So check that out. I create an event on the page here that is not sanctioned by them. I just basically stole their information and put it on here. But they have a basket lunch starting at noon, prizes, raffles, sliding, and more. So pilots eat free. So if you're really cheap, jump in your airplane, spend $100 in fuel, and get yourself some free barbecue. So I already talked about the raffle. That is over. I don't need to discuss that anymore. But for our topic for today, I'll share these links if they're not already shared in the subject. But we're going to be talking about stabilized approach and go-arounds. And if you go to your Airplane Flying Handbook, Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 are the subject areas that you might want to review, and that's all online, free from our friends at the FAA. And there's a section in Chapter 9 where it talks about the stabilized approach criteria, and I'll discuss this a little bit more in detail after I do the video, but it's just a good review because as pilots we tend to kind of commit ourselves to a landing no matter what, and the decision to make a go-around is probably the hardest decision to make. And stabilized approach criteria is kind of a good way to create a sense of normalcy and a sense of what looks right. And if it doesn't look right, go around and then come back and fix it. As my dad used to say, you cannot polish a turd. So if you have a turd approach, most likely the end result is going to be not a very good landing. So, but recognizing that and having the discipline to go around. In the airline world, it's a lot more defined for us as far as what the go-around criteria is, and then also with that is the accountability that you have by having a second pilot. Because if you don't meet that criteria as far as descent rate, checklist, completion, etc., if you don't start and initiate the go-around, your co-pilot or your non-flying pilot is probably going to commit you to it and call the go-around themselves. But flying single pilot, we don't have that luxury. So for any of you instructors that are out there, I have created a pretty extensive database of safety topics, and these are all presented by the FAA. And what I've done is, you can see on these links here, I can share this with you, so just send me an email at info@maineflying.org. And I've created videos for a lot of these briefings, but I've got over 40, well, almost 40, I guess it's 38, close to 40. And it goes into detail for each one of these as far as, the background, and there's also references in there. So if you're a flight instructor, I do not hold a monopoly on any of this information or knowledge. Free to share it with you, and it makes great information when I do biennial flight reviews. I tend to send them here instead and have, go over some of these topics prior to the biennial flight review, and then just kind of go from there. So for today, we've got the stabilized approach and landing that we're going to talk about. And there's links in there for the chapter 8 and 9 of the Airplane Flying Handbook and a couple videos, which the video is what we're going to watch next. And after that, we'll talk to Jason. So without further ado, let me share this tab, make that bigger, and then I'll hit play.
The topic of the month for September 2018 is stabilized approach and go around. In this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about loss of control accidents and recommendations from a work group that studies loss of control. We'll define and discuss stabilized approaches and go-arounds. Finally, we'll give you some tips and tricks that will help you to avoid loss of control in any aircraft. In a recent 10-year period, there were more than 1,200 fatal loss of control accidents. Many of those accidents occurred in the approach phase of flight. Think stall, spin, crash. And many of those accidents resulted from an unstabilized approach or a failure to go around. Here are some findings of a recent study of loss of control accidents. Most fatal GA loss of control accidents have one or more of these causal factors. We'll focus on unstabilized approaches and go-arounds, but we'll also touch on over-reliance on automation and aeronautical decision-making. Pilots often think of stabilized approaches in terms of instrument flying in large airplanes, but they're equally important to VFR pilots in smaller aircraft. Either way, what you want is a constant speed and a constant descent rate that will get you from a given point to the touchdown zone with a minimum of maneuvering. That's important because the stabilized approach will safely get you in the best position to land with the least amount of work to do when you get there. We'll begin with a discussion of instrument approach operations. VFR and pattern operations will come a little later. For instrument operations, we want to be stabilized no lower than 1,000 feet above the runway on the correct flight path to the touchdown zone. That means we're on a direct course from 1,000 feet to the airport. We use a power setting that will yield the recommended approach speed for our aircraft in landing configuration. In the descent department, maintain the glide slope if you're landing on a precision approach runway or not more than a 500 foot per minute rate of descent, unless a greater descent rate is required for approach. We'll stabilize if we have to make only small corrections in pitch, heading, and power to maintain the path. Before you're 1,000 feet above touchdown, you also need to be configured for landing with the landing checklist complete. Many instrument pilots want to have all this done by the time they reach the final approach fix. They'll generally be a little higher than 1,000 feet at that point, but it's a good practice that will give you plenty of time to concentrate on flying to the missed approach fix. If the wind is gusting, we can add some speed to compensate, but no more than half of the gust factor. If the wind is at 12 knots and gusting to 18, we can add 3 knots to our final approach speed. So what if we're not stable by the time we descend to within 1,000 feet of the runway? Well, the answer is simple. We go around and set up a more stable approach on the next try. This can be a tough decision to make, especially if you must make another instrument approach. That's why you have to be committed to the decision before you reach the 1,000 foot point. Then it's simple. If you're stable, you continue. If not, go around and set up again. VFR parameters are essentially the same except that you can get a little closer to the ground before making the go-around decision. If you're flying a pattern, you need to be stable on final in landing configuration with the landing checklist complete. If you're not stable at 500 feet, go around. I know we cited some general performance numbers in the previous slides, but what speeds and configurations do you use for your flying machine? Obviously, the place to go is the POH. You want to study your performance charts, speeds for safe operation, systems, and emergency procedures. Have your speeds and configurations data memorized so you don't have to check the book in the middle of a high workload evolution. Excessive speed, excessive altitude, and the necessity for maneuvering can all contribute to a destabilized approach. Obviously, entering the pattern at 150 knots or just above stall speed, or 1,000 feet above the pattern altitude, or major heading changes make a stabilized approach unlikely, if not impossible. But how often have you heard this from the tower? Cessna 43 Kilo Charlie, keep your speed up to the marker. Faster traffic to follow. Or how about this? Piper 312 Victor Papa, make an S-turn on final, traffic departing. Or how about a Bonanza following a J3 Cub on final at a non-towered airport? ATC and other traffic in the vicinity can destabilize your approach if you let them. If following traffic or complying with ATC instructions will destabilize your flight, it's time to exercise your pilot in command responsibility, say, unable, and make another plan. Let's face it, it's hard to say unable. Pilots need to have a good self-image in order to do what we do. We care a lot about how others see us. We take justified pride in our skills and competencies that enable us to be adaptable and accommodating, to rise to the occasion if need be. We're also mission-oriented and will do almost anything to get her done. That's a formula for success most of the time, but as the song says, you've got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. It's fine to be all of these things, but when your approach is becoming unstable, it's time to get out of Dodge. There's no shame in missing an approach or going around. Great pilots anticipate the need, and they do it frequently. Oddly enough, flight instructors can be part of the problem, and here's how that works. Let's face it, instructors are very good plane handlers. They can easily salvage a student-induced, destabilized approach and make a perfect landing, usually. When we take control, we salvage the situation, saving time and money. We get the airplane back on time for the next student. Our performance definitely impresses our students and, with luck, even the boss. But it's sending the wrong message. Watching us fix a problem they've created, students begin to believe that, with the right skills, they can fix anything, and they look forward to the day when they can equal their instructor's skill. Many students believe they'll get there sometime next week. Your students will get into impossible situations, and you want to take over, but you do them a disservice if you fix the problem. Allow them to analyze the situation, miss the approach, or go around, and when they do that, reward them for excellent aeronautical decision making. So, when do I go around? If you're at or below 1,000 feet IFR or 500 feet VFR and the approach isn't stable, it's time to miss the approach or go around. Likewise, if the runway you're approaching is out of service or there's traffic on it that won't be clear when you get there, it's time to go around. Whatever the situation, the earlier you make the go-around decision, the easier it will be, and, once you've decided to go around, stick to that decision. Changing your mind after you've started the maneuver is bound to be destabilizing, and you're too close to the ground for that. When missing an approach or going around, you're usually pretty close to the ground, so your first priority is to maintain aircraft control. Arrest your descent, apply power to maintain altitude or climb as appropriate, and configure the airplane for climb or level flight. With the aircraft under control and not descending, it's time to navigate. If you're IFR, continue to the missed approach point, and then either fly the published missed approach procedure or follow ATC instructions. VFR, continue to the runway threshold while climbing to pattern altitude, then either maneuver to remain in or re-enter the pattern, or follow ATC instructions as appropriate. When we're satisfied we're safely aviating and navigating, it's time to let other folks in on our plans. Communicate your intentions to ATC if IFR or in a towered environment. IFR operations to non-towered airports require a call to ATC and perhaps a call on the Common Traffic Advisory frequency. VFR will be one call only on the tower frequency or local traffic advisory frequency as appropriate. For many years, we've been developing automation for general aviation pilots, and we've encouraged pilots to use it. That's led to reduced, hands-on workload and increased situational awareness. Those are good things. But, paradoxically, reliance on automation is beginning to erode basic pilot skills, and when the situation calls for pilots to take over, they're often not performing as well as they would have if they were hand flying all along. We recommend that pilots be familiar with and comfortable in operating all the automation in the airplanes they fly, but we also recommend that they practice hand flying regularly so when the occasion arises, they'll be on top of their game. This is a good subject to explore in refresher training. Finally, here are some tips and tricks to help you avoid a loss of control accident. Plan to miss or go around. You should plan for and brief, if appropriate, the missed approach or go around for each and every approach. Know where you'll make the decision and miss or go around at that point. Don't second guess yourself. This is the time to stand by your decision. Preset the frequencies you'll need. Planning for misses or go-arounds also involves setting up your nav and comm radios in anticipation of these events. This is pretty easy with today's radios that store multiple frequencies, but even if you have one frequency to work with, you can list the frequencies in sequence on your kneeboard or scratch pad. That way, you won't have to go searching for them in a high workload phase of flight. Manage distractions. Learn to manage distractions, especially while maneuvering close to the ground. Maintain a sterile cockpit while in departure, approach, and landing flight segments, and while maneuvering. Make sure your aircraft is stable before copying ATC instructions, changing charts, reviewing approach, etc. Assign the second pilot or passenger to help you scan for traffic. You can often turn distracting passengers into assets by assigning them a job to do. Practice missed approaches and go-arounds. Don't wait until you have to do it for real to practice these maneuvers. At least once a quarter, fly a missed approach. Pick one that requires pilot navigation, not just vectors for another approach. If you're usually vectored to final for most of your approaches, you should also practice a complete approach procedure without vectors quarterly. The same is true for go-arounds. It's a good idea to practice them from time to time as well. Going around, re-entering the pattern, collision avoidance, and communicating your intentions really increases pilot workload, and, with practice, you'll look like a pro when you have to do it for real. Seek regular refresher training. We suggest you do annual refresher training at a minimum, more frequently if you're new to flying, and when returning to flying after a layoff. Ask your CFI to include full approach procedures and misses, as well as a go-around or two. The Wings Pilot Proficiency Program is a good place to document your training. Now for a quick review. Stabilized approaches are essential to safe, blank, flying. A stabilized approach is essential to instrument and VFR flying, and it matters not whether you're an airline pilot with thousands of hours or a private pilot just starting out. So the answer is definitely all of the above. After you begin a go-around, you can change your mind, but only once. Changing your mind and trying to complete a landing after you've started the go-around is destabilizing. You're better off to complete the go-around and return for another landing attempt. The answer is false. Flight instructors should demonstrate how to salvage unstable approaches. This practice, though common, is usually not recommended. The answer is false. If CFIs always take over and stabilize the approach, or complete the landing, students don't get to make the go-around decision, nor do they get practice in go-arounds. As certificated pilots, they may be less inclined to exercise the go-around option, and that has contributed to a significant number of approach and landing accidents. The order of priority in executing a missed approach or go-around is: it's true that all of these things happen at nearly the same time, but your first priority is to fly the airplane, followed by navigating so as to avoid impacting terrain. The answer is C. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Once you've got those under control, it's time to communicate your intentions. Good practices to avoid loss of control are A. Manage distractions. B. Seek refresher training. C. Preset frequencies. D. Practice missed approaches and go-arounds. E. Participate in wings. Or F. All of the above. The correct answer is F. All of the above. Please direct any questions to your local FAST team representative. Narration by Bradford Wood, National Outreach Manager. There's nothing like the feeling you get.
All right, so that's it with that. I have some other links that I added on the Facebook that also, when this video comes out, I'll put in the description. But one of the, you can kind of expand on this topic and talk about angle of attack indicators. And I have a video that talks about angle of attack indicators. And this is something that's used more in the military world, probably more often in the Navy than other branches. But you're kind of seeing it come about in the general aviation world, especially in experimental, because it's just easy to add it. But there are other systems out there that can be easily added to your certificated aircraft as well. But so I added some videos on that, and there's also some handouts that I included as well for some of the links about angle of attack indicators that are put out by the FAA. So and this is a great tool to have, and it's the angle of attack is obviously, I mean, we're referencing most for the most part in general aviation airspeed, but airspeed doesn't correlate directly to angle of attack because an aircraft can obviously stall at any airspeed, any weight. It's all based on angle of attack. So if you have the ability to add on or get training in devices, a lot of the new the electronic displays, a lot of them have the capability to add angle of attack. So I have a system in mind that is set up, but it's not live right now because I need a different pitot indicator. But I just, or pitot tube than what I have. So I've ordered that, and I'm going to add that because I understand the value of angle of attack versus just using airspeed as a reference. But that's a good tool to have. So I've added that link in there. And then there's also another one here that is about stabilized approach and landings. When you click on that, it'll take you to this PDF file, which is a summary of basically what we just already went over here. So, and it talks about the stabilized approach criteria. I know I mentioned the airline piece, and I can't share the document that I have from our, we call it an FCOM, but it talks about what our stabilized approach criteria is in the stabilized approach, and it's landing gears down, flaps are in the landing configuration, lateral you're within a half a dot, vertical within 1 dot, your descent rate is less than 1,000 feet per minute unless required or briefed. Sometimes you might come into maybe say a mountain airport where you're crossing at a higher altitude and you may plan a greater than 1,000 feet per minute descent rate, but you brief it beforehand. Speed is managed target speed -5 up to +10. Thrust is above idle. So if any of those things are not met by 1,000 feet, you're supposed to initiate the go around. And we actually have a call out at 1,000 feet, and it's 1,000 stable on tower. So we're not only indicating that we're meeting the stable approach criteria, but we've also made the transition to tower where we're waiting. The response to that's supposed to be either cleared to land or awaiting landing clearance. And then if you're not stable, we're supposed to respond not stable, go around. And that's our kind of check for the safety piece there, is to make sure that our accountability partner, i.e. the person flying with us, can make us do the go around. If you're flying by yourself, I mean, I talk to myself when I'm flying by myself, actually, and you can brief yourself. You can say out loud what you plan to do if that helps you, and then talk about your plan B. Like we always, we brief our plan A, what we plan to do. Even if it's the visual approach, we brief it in the airline world. In our plan B, we also brief as well, and we plan as far as loading that approach, whether it's the missed approach and the go around. We brief what it's going to be if we can't execute our plan A. We talk about what the missed approach is going to look like, and it's already loaded into the box for us. We talk about the altitudes, we talk about everything, and we set it up even on the performance side for the emergency return if you have to come back. And we brief that out loud, not that we're planning to fail, but just in case we do fail, we have in both team members, both pilots in the cockpit, they know what the plan's going to be. So there's nothing preventing you from doing that, flying by yourself. You can even talk to those passengers that are in you when you brief it, so they have an idea of what's going on. And you can look for your own stabilized approach criteria that was discussed in that video, and make that a contract with yourself that if you're not going to meet that at the specified altitude, that you go around. And a lot of these accidents that they talk about happen because people, they try to salvage a poor approach. And in the training environment, typically a poor approach leads to a poor landing. And so how you get around that is to make that contract with yourself to commit to the go around and practice that procedure. So that's pretty much it. All those links are on here, including this one here that I'm showing. And with that, we'll end the presentation and we'll transition to Jason, which has a little bit with our landing competitions that you guys do. The stabilized approach criteria that they're subjected to is probably very important as far as stabilized approach leads to a successful landing, which is hopefully on the line or just past it, and executing the stopping to win, hopefully. So Jason, with that, I'll hand it over to you, and you can talk about your Northeast STOL series, and then you'll transition into your EAA chapter in Pittsfield and anything else you want to talk about. You can talk about you not winning this year.
That's okay. It's okay. So yeah, thanks Sam for having me. As it shows, I'm Jason Scholten, Northeast STOL series director. Myself and my partner Chris Arno started this in 2020, along with the National STOL series we're affiliated with. So yeah, stabilized approach, couldn't have thought of a better topic to segue into. We always tell our pilots to not try anything that at our competitions that they haven't already practiced at their home field or another grass field. And that's the main thing is practice, all your procedures. Now STOL is most people are familiar with it right now. It's a competition where we pit planes and pilots against each other to land on or after a line on a field, and whoever takes off and lands in the shortest combined distance overall takes home the trophy of the day. We'd like to see more people competing. It's open to all skill levels and all airframes. So if you're interested, you can find my contact information on our Facebook page, Northeast STOL Series, and you can send me a message or call me directly, and show up to one of our competitions and look for the orange shirts, and we can set you up. Yeah, so our first competition for the 2023 season starts May 20th at Harris Field, 8.3 kilo in Glens Falls, New York. So we hope to see some people there. And yeah, you got any questions for me?
Well, so Jay, I just want to make this clear for everyone that's watching. Like, I think some people feel as though that you're catering to a certain group of people here, and I don't think that's the case at all. You welcome any first comers. It's an opportunity for people to participate and practice. And I know that, such as in Hampton, you had some. You have your regulars, and then you have those that show up. And I remember in Hampton specifically, you had one contestant that actually gave the regulars quite the run for their money.
Yes, we did. You must be referring to the young lady in the J3,
which by performance measures was. I mean, you could have the most max performing airplane out there, but it all depends on the person who's flying it. And she max performed that airplane to the level that I think if she was familiar with, some of those other aircraft that were in it, she would have smoked those other contestants.
It's very true, Sam. And I say this all the time. It's not the airplane, it's the pilot, and how much time you put into training, just like any other sport, uh, determines the outcome. And if you and your plane are one, if you know that airplane and its performance profiles, and you practice with that airplane on a regular basis, you're going to do well. You're going to show up, and like that young lady did. She has spent a lot of time in that J3, no flaps, and she gave them a run for their money.
And just to be clear, the scoring matrix is they each get three attempts, and the total distance that you're using for your score is going to be the takeoff distance added to your landing distance. And if you land obviously long of the line, that distance is going to count against you. But you scratch if you land short, and you don't have a landing distance for that, so therefore you don't have a score for either sequence.
That's correct. So it's a tally of each circuit. So one takeoff and landing in the same circuit constitutes a scoring a run. So you can't combine the best of all your takeoffs and landings, as though some might like to do. But yeah, I'm the guy on the line making the hard call that nobody likes to see. But I call that white line. It's a 12-inch by 60-foot white line, the great equalizer, because you could be the best pilot in the series, and if you land before that line, you scratched, and your score is no good.
And your point of reference is the center of the main gear, correct?
Correct. Yep, center of the main. So if you're flying a tail wheel, it's the center of the front axle, and if you're flying a nose dragger, it's the center of the main axle. It doesn't matter. The nose wheel can touch, preferably not on a wheelbarrow, and the tail wheel can touch first. It doesn't matter, but it's where those mains touch is where I make the call.
And I know there have been times where you've been given a little bit of grief, which I think is half the fun. I mean, I have a great time making fun of you. It's one of my favorite pastimes.
It's a tough job, I got a lot of friends, and I'd like to say I've kept them all, but we've had some competitors that weren't very happy with the results. But it's a visual game. They still, even on the national level, even with all the electronic devices, they still have had a hard time going beyond a visual scoring system. There's no real way to tell by artificial means whether an airplane touches down before that line. It's a visual game.
In the Northeast STOL series is a your events that you have if for those series competitors that qualifies them for the national competition as well.
Yeah, up until this year, and we're in talks with the national. I gotta reach out to them. They've changed management and some rules, so we're gonna get with them and find out where they're at. But yes, up until now, all of our events will count towards two events on the national series. So you only have to attend one to qualify for the finals on the nationals instead of three. And we have had our Tom Ford 2 years ago or last year, I can't recall. He was our series champion of 2020, and he went down to Louisiana for one of the national events, and they had no idea who he was, and he knocked them out of the water, and they just couldn't believe it. So yeah, he made a good show for Northeast STOL down there in Louisiana.
And you're volunteering at the national level as well. You're not just doing the coordination for the Northeast series as well.
Yep, that is correct. Yeah, when I can make the national has expanded so vastly. So it takes a lot of people to run these things, and so they take volunteers on every level to make these things happen.
Are you guys going to be at Sun and Fun this year?
No, the National STOL Series is not going to be doing the Sun and Fun this year. We've done it in the past for the Holiday STOL Expo, but Sun and Fun has their own STOL. It's not a competition. They call it a demonstration,
Mhm.
invitational. So they will, but most of the time you're going to see all the same people.
So
Both
you've
running,
got
running
New York. You announced as your first ones. I know you have a few main locations. You want to talk about those as well?
Yeah, so yeah, we kick off in New York most every year. Following that will be June 10th. That will be Dover, Foxcroft, Maine. We have a tentative request from Brunswick for the 17th of June, that same month. Whether or not that'll be a series event or just a fun fly.
Is that the same time as their drive-in fly-in that they're doing?
Yes, yep. And fall, so that's June, July. I believe the 17th. I can't recall. Second Saturday in July. It looks Hampton, New Hampshire, which is fast becoming our biggest event. They really enjoy having us down there. We get a good showing from all the region.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I've done that. Well, I went one year, but I didn't stick around. But the second year I went down and I was helping.
Yeah, you announced for us. That was great.
Yeah, I did, and that was a lot of fun, and it really was a good time. So, but
and then we'll have Bowman Flying. We do a STOL a series competition there at the last Saturday in August. And then September we'll be at our home field, Thompson Field, for the finals.
I'm sure that'll be that's my favorite.
Yeah,
it's your birthday party.
My birthday party. Yep.
Okay, Jay. So I'm going to go ahead and transition from there. I don't.
I'll just touch one more thing. If
Sure.
We're always looking for sponsors, so if we can find, if we got aviation minded companies or people to incentivize our prizes and for our pilots to get them to come, we're always looking for sponsors. So again, reach out to me or Chris Arno, and we'll get you set up.
And it is a lot of fun, even if you aren't participating. If you fly into one of these events and watch, and you do take volunteers that show up, that show up and just want to help out. So,
Yes.
Keep that in mind. If you want to participate, you have line judges, and that's something that people can help out. And you don't need to be you prefer to have pilots, correct?
So yeah, I'd like to have between 6 and 8 line judges. The more judges on the line, the less each individual judge has to run. And I don't know about you, but I haven't met too many pilots that like to run. So, so
They
yeah,
like the free pancake breakfast, but
that's right. And I prefer to have them either pilots or aviation savvy. It's one of those, you're right on the line. Sometimes we're mere feet from a wingtip, so
Right.
We got to be heads on a swivel and paying attention to what's going on. So, and a lot of times what I'll do is we'll have the pilots of the classes that aren't flying judging. It lends a bit of equity to the judging, so you'd like to be as fair as to your fellow competitors as you'd expect them to judge you.
All right. Well, that will transition to what's going on with EA 736 in Pittsfield. So you're trying to revitalize the chapter and get more involvement. I understand you have several projects that you probably would love to have some people participate in, restoration, which I would love as well. So
Yeah.
why don't you go ahead and speak about that, Jay? And
So
we've got one of them right here.
Yeah, we do, and actually we got our whole board of the EAA chapter is on tonight.
Am I on that board?
No, not yet. We have Charlie Serpenant and Mike.
We can easily put you on. Don't you worry.
You will.
So as you know, I'm a dive in head first kind of person, and I like to move and shake. So we are just like every other EAA chapter. It's quiet, kind of quiet on the home front. But I have a real passion in building and getting back to the grassroots of EAA, and I'm trying to revitalize and reach out to people that are interested in both flying and building aircraft. And we did receive last year a donation from one of our founding members, passed away, and his wife donated his final project to the chapter to finish. That is the Springbird. It's styled after a Tailorcraft. It's an experimental, and it's very close to being finished, but it needs a little bit of work to finish up. So we're always looking for volunteers to get together. But I'm also looking for other builders that are building away in their garages and their living rooms that aren't affiliated with anybody, and reach out to us, and let's come over and look at your project and talk about it, and network and help out and get home building back on the rise.
So this one I think is on top of your list. I know you have your own aircraft too that you're working on, but then you also have another BC-12 Tailorcraft, which is a certified aircraft,
Yep.
which probably will be up next after this one.
That's correct.
Yeah. So if anyone out there is interested in this, I know, Jason, I connected you with one person that expressed an interest in volunteering. You'll probably take anyone from any level of experience. Just if anything, it probably helps motivate you to show up and work if someone else is willing to come with you.
Absolutely. You don't have to be knowledgeable in any aspect. Just have a passion for building or aviation in general. Come check it out, see what we're doing, and you might find an aspect of the build process that suits you. People that some are savvy with wiring, electronics, some are engine people, some just like to build with wood or metal, and there's all of that and more in each one of these projects. So there's a place for you. And where I'm not savvy is all the technology nowadays. These young people can build parts from 3D printers, and there's places for that now in experimental aviation. So
is there any questions or additions from anyone here that's logged on now? Charles, do you have any comments other than sarcastic ones? I think it's good. All right, Jay, with that, I don't know.
No, I'm good.
You're good?
Good. Thanks.
All right. You want to add anything else, Jay?
No, you can find me, you can reach out through the EAA 736 Facebook page. And we don't have a heated hangar space at the moment, but things will probably kick off here when weather starts improving, and we've got a few more people that are interested in helping the chapter move forward. So we're planning on one of the things we've got in the works right now, and Mike and Charlie aren't privy to this yet. I'm planning on getting a EAA Maine chapters conference. I'd like to get together with all the chapters and find out what we're all doing and how we can help each other move forward. So,
well, there are probably a lot of these chapters that have these hidden projects that are, tabled somewhere. I know, like down in Bowman, they have a peat and pole that they worked on for years and just never finished. But all it takes is another interested party to jump in and get involved with that, and then now you're working towards completion. And some people may think that's a burden on them, but there's still an educational opportunity there, and it has value to somebody out there. So,
absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, Jay, I guess I'll post this up, and then I'll add your contact information. And as you get those events, I'll share them to the Maine Flying and advertise those, obviously, as we get closer. So,
all right. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being an active participant in this process. So, all right. That's it. That's all I have. Nothing else to add. So I'm going to stop streaming. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie and Mike, stay on for a minute if you got.
Yep.